o'clock. Hope the pizza was nice. So we are going to start with the presentations. First, if you guys have your laptop with you, you can already log in. So if you don't have a laptop, we encourage you to pair up with somebody who does have a laptop, so you can pair program together. It's always better with two because things will go faster and you learn from each other. So tonight you have the opportunity to win a ticket for the Front Mania. It's a new conference, a front-end conference. So you all put your name in the basket during the break. We will pick two names from it and then you will see if you have won. He's my clicker. So my name is Anthony Mundier. I'm the community manager of KLM. So what we're trying to do is organize internal communities for front-end, back-end and mobile and for UX. And also extend it outside to you guys. Or even to work together with other companies. So if you're working at a company and you think, hey, what you guys are doing is nice, we should do it too. Contact me and we can do maybe next session at your place. Which, yeah, or you have some content to share, some presentations or some cool stuff you're doing. We can, we're always happy to share. Yes. So the agenda for tonight. So the kids are already playing with their Lego Mindstorm. Yeah, we moved the kids corner from there to there because kids have their own agenda and they just, yeah, go where they are. So first, a presentation by Goran and Martin about reactive APIs. And then by Davey and Greg about GraphQL. So after that we will start. As I said, this area is for the JavaScript web development beginners area. This will be GraphQL. So who will do the GraphQL Angular workshop? Okay, cool. And who will do the GraphQL React? Yes. And GraphQL Vue? Okay, cool. So what I suggest is that to get people a bit more together, that the GraphQL Angular guys will be there in the back on the bench. That we have here the React guys and here the Vue guys. So it's like easier when you are together. You know, want to ask questions. You know, want to see how they are doing, if you're doing better. And in the back we will have the backend guys with the Java reactive stuff. Next one. So how it will work is you guys will get an assignment. You'll need to work on it. There are mentors here walking around, so if you're stuck and the guy next to you doesn't know the answer, you can raise your hand. So we have some mentors over there. Greg and Davey will mentor a lot about the GraphQL. We have some more GraphQL JavaScript guys who will mentor. Yes, I see some hands here and there. So just raise your hand and somebody will help you out. And yeah, it's time for the presentations. So Goran, Martin, you're next. Kan er wel vasthouden. Oké, je hebt zo'n oude nog. Okay. Deze, ja, sure.
So, hello everybody. My name is Goran Nikolic. I work for KLM, for our tech department, which is there, the logo. Just a question up front. Who are backend Java developers here, or Node? Okay, so it's a relatively small group. But I think it might be interesting for everybody. A second question, who is already familiar with reactive programming? Okay, small group as well. So, what we try to do is create a workshop that's both for novice developers as well as for experienced developers. The presentation part that we're going to give is about the basics, some stuff you need to know before you go into the workshop. And the workshop goes from very basic to relatively complicated. It's as far as you want to take it yourself. Does anybody know who this is, by the way? You know? Cosmo. Yeah, he's actually based on Wally, and he is fucking incredible. Yeah, he's very cool. So we're going to do some Hello World examples, of course, during the presentation. But for the workshop, we have something nice, and at the end, we will show what you will actually be building. We're going to talk a little bit about reactive streams and reactive programming, what the concepts are behind it. But we're going to go very quickly through it, and we will not go into too much detail. We will go talk a little bit about Reactor, which is a Java framework to do reactive programming with. It's like the counterpart to RxJava or RxJS in the JavaScript community. We're going to highlight Spring Web Flux, which is a new framework in Spring 5. And we're going to show a demo of the workshop and talk about the workshop itself. So, reactive streams. What is it? Well, usually you see a diagram like this to show what is actually happening in the interaction. These diagrams are composed of a line, which is a line over time. So this is representing time. This is representing the end of the stream. And these are all the data parts that are coming in. Now, a reactive stream is an asynchronous stream that's handling events that are being handled in an asynchronous nature. So there are callback functions everywhere, like do on next. Every time an item appears, you can invoke a function when the item is emitted. When there is an error, you can emit another function to do something on error. You can do something on complete, and there are a few more as well. But basically, that's the whole concept behind it. It's more complicated in theory than it is in practice. Well, the reactive streams specification comes with a few interfaces. These are identical for all of the implementations. So you can use RxJava with Reactor, with even the Java 9 Flow API, which will come in the next slide. There is a publisher, which is emitting events over time, or a fixed publisher if you want to migrate from a classical Java library. There is a processor, or might be a processor, that's both a publisher and a subscriber. It subscribes to the publisher, transforms the data, and then emits the data itself as well to the next consumer. The subscriber consumes this data and does whatever it needs to do with it. Now, the subscriber has an interface with the publisher, a subscription. And in the subscription, it says how many items it can process. And this concept is called back pressure, handling back pressure. We're going to talk a little bit about back pressure in the next slide, but basically the whole reactive streams interface definition is this. It's nothing more than that. Yeah. So I mentioned back pressure. So what is back pressure? It's one of the main concepts of the reactive stream specification. If you keep pushing data to a subscriber, eventually it will overflow and not be able to handle the items that are emitted. And it will crash out of memory or something. If you can define what happens if this occurs, then you can define a function for this behavior. So, for example, if back pressure occurs, if too many items come in and the subscribers are unable to process them, you can, for example, drop them. So on back pressure drop means items over time come in. So this is, for example, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. You see that the subscriber is able to process the first 2 items, but then on the 3rd item, it just vanishes. It disappears into nothing. Now, the advantage of this is that your application actually never fails, because you defined what your failing point is, and you said when this point is achieved, then just ignore all the items that cannot be processed. So you can continue with your application. Now, there are more functions that you can define. You can either define your own function. If it occurs, I want to store it in a Redis database and process it later, or something else. So that means that you can buffer it. You can also say, if an error occurs, if a back pressure occurs, I want to throw an error. I want to basically stop the entire stream from processing anything else. So it will throw an exception. Or just emit the latest event that has been processed. Yeah, Java 9. So since Java 9, the Reactive Streams API has been actually implemented in it. It's natively available. However, it's available for the interfaces. It's not actually really something that you want to use on production. On production, you could better use a real implementation, like, for example, Reactor. But you can make it interoperable. So if your interfaces or your own libraries are exposing these interfaces, they are interchangeable with RxJava, with Reactor, and with even other implementations of the Reactive Streams API. It consists of the interfaces I just mentioned. So there is a publisher, a subscriber, a processor, and a subscription. And a processor is both a publisher and a subscriber. But there is no out-of-the-box back pressure available. So if you want to do something with back pressure, this is not the way to go. And there is only one publisher available, the submission publisher. So we're going to do a little demo now. A little bit of code. Not the hello world yet. Okay. Let's see how I can do this. Okay, so what we're going to do is, in the presentation, we saw hot versus cold publishers. So there are two types of publishers, a hot one and a cold one. What it basically means is that the cold one emits its items once and is finished. So when you have a subscriber that's subscribing to it, it will take all the items that have come in over time, and then it stops. A hot publisher can take on multiple subscribers and replay history of that publisher. So if the publisher is unbounded, for example, if it emits 10 items, every time a subscriber subscribes to it, it will start from 0, all the way to the end.
Okay.
Closer? Do I have to repeat the last part, or? Okay. 5 minutes, okay. So let's first start with the Flux. Of course, I have to be a little bit politically correct right now. So what I did here is I defined a Flux, a publisher, which emits 3 items: Trump, Kim, and Ape. And then every time an item comes in, when I subscribe to it, I just print it out. So you see Trump, Kim, and Ape. Awesome stuff, I know, it's not that interesting, but it gets a little bit better. So obviously I don't want Trump, so I filter him out. So what you can do with Reactive Streams is you can apply all kinds of processors to it. And if you use a framework like Reactor or RxJava or RxJS for that matter, you get some processors already available to you. So you can filter, you can map, and you can do all kinds of operations on them that come out of the box. Now, if you would have to implement it yourself, it means you have to implement 2 interfaces, publisher, subscriber, implement all the functions, all the methods. It's very verbose, and that's 80s Java. We don't write that kind of Java anymore. So these frameworks provide some convenience functions to do all this stuff automatically. So some people might think, why does this work? Well, this is a Java 10 feature. Type invariant, not that interesting at the moment, but right. So it's now much easier to define a list in Java than it was before. So what I do here, I define a list. Now, the reason why I define the list here is because most of your APIs or your own functions don't return a publisher. They return a value or multiple values in a list or an array or whatever. It's very easy to convert from those types to a publisher. Now, what the Flux publisher is that it's defined to emit multiple items. So if you have a list of 50 items, it will emit, with this function, each item from the list separately. And that's why this works. So now, what I showed you was something you could use for historical APIs, for example, that provide you a certain kind of type. But if you have something else, for example, you have some type of scheduler or something, and you want every second something to happen, or every 5 seconds. Just a quick question. What do you guys think this will print out? Well, so you're correct that it will not print anything, but that's because the process ends. And I just said a stream is a asynchronous thing. And if something is asynchronous, it runs on a different thread. But that means that my main thread currently has stopped doing anything. So if I block it for a moment. And I should see something. So now you see it's printing out the interval. So what I said is I want a flux that emits an item every second. So every second that interval is currently emitted, but it's currently an integer value. An integer value is not that interesting, so let's do something with it. So let's map that to one of the values. And now you see it will pick one value from the list and emit the item. This is continuous, so this will actually never stop. I said it as an interval of 1 second. It will emit something every second, and it will live as long as the application lives. It gives an example of if you want to do something with an actual stream that lives over the entire time of your application. You can also limit it to, for example, that it only lives for 15 seconds or 20 seconds. It all depends on the feature you want to write. Now I mentioned in Reactor it has two concepts, a flux and a mono. So what's the difference between the two? Well, I can print out a mono so you can have a look. I'm gonna go quick now. As you can see, it prints out the array. Kim, Shrimp, Kim, and Ape. That's because a mono is defined for one value, and a flux is defined if you have multiple values over time. It's a very simple difference. Now I will skip the next part because I don't have a lot of time yet, and the next part is actually what matters because that's WebFlux. WebFlux is new in Spring 5. There is one thing that might be an issue for some. Java 8 is an absolute minimum requirement. It completely works with lambdas and streams, and it doesn't work without them. So if you want to use them, you have to use Java 8. And it's fully integrated Project Reactor, which is also a Java 8 only thing. Well, let's make a demo. Cosmo doesn't like it because it will probably fuck something up, but oh. Doesn't open my ID anymore. There it is. Yeah, my laptop is a bit old. Need a new one. My boss is not here, so that sucks. Ah, come on. It's an old Apple, so I got an update from Apple, slowing it down, so I have to buy a new one now. So, ah, come on, what is this? Force quit. One more time. No. Yeah. Yeah. This I need to show a little bit. But so it seems IntelliJ is broken, and I wanted to give it a pug because it's such a great IDE, but it actually doesn't want to start anymore. So I will do the demo on that part. What we're going to create will be the lowest price finder. Being an airline, of course, it's something airline related. This is the link for the GitHub page. The incorrect link was mailed out. I will put it on that screen for the workshop for you guys to clone it. I hope you have fun with it. We will show very quickly what the demo is. Yeah, I have to do this as well because I cannot start it locally. So let's hope that this works. Yeah, it's on Heroku, so app is probably down, so it needs to restart the app as well. It's going to take a few seconds. Okay, so now it's... So this is what we're going to build. It's reactively retrieving the prices of all the locations where you want to fly to. Well, this is the departure is from Charles de Gaulle at this moment. And it will give price updates for any location that it finds a price update for. With all the information, what the cost is, what the destination point is, and with what aircraft you will be flying with. It will be a relatively easy setup in the beginning, and it will end up more complicated at a later point. And that's for the skill level. So if you're experienced with reactive streams, you go to the last part. If you're not, you start at the first part. I will be with Maarten at the end. Maarten will be giving a little bit of information about this front end as well. How to handle server-sent events from the server and how you can make your front end a little bit more reactive towards your customer. And I will be talking about the back end, how this is built and how it's exposing its data. Sorry for the crash of my IDE, but this was my talk.
Thank you, Goran. Nice talk. Davey and Greg. So next up are the GraphQL guys from Hackages. So Hackages is a company who provides trainings and a lot of other things. So they're helping us out at this meetup tonight. kan die even... je niet... is it this one or the other one?
Hi everyone, so my name is Greg. I will help you this evening with the GraphQL workshop along with Davey, and there you have some guys who will help you. Someone is running away, but you have, please stand up, people who will help you. There's one there and there's another one that I can't find right now. Okay. Okay, so can everybody read this, or should I put it a bit bigger? In the end, okay, you can't read it. Okay. Is this fine? This is fine. Nothing changed. Okay. Myla?
Yeah, go ahead. If you, yeah, okay, much bigger there, maybe, like in the back. Yeah. Can you read this? Can you tell us what you read there? Zero. This is query, so I'm going to interpret everything that is here. Okay. Query.
Yeah. Okay. So, who has heard about GraphQL before? Oh, that's amazing! Wow, almost everybody. I would say 80%. Who has used GraphQL already? Played with it a bit. Okay, but less. Put it in production. Some people do. Okay, fine, good. So GraphQL stands for a graph query language that has been made by Facebook. It became very popular. It is an alternative to REST that we know. So we will use Apollo. Apollo is made by the Meteor company. And they make very useful libraries on the front end and the back end to help you create your GraphQL backends, and also to help you make queries with your clients. What's really interesting about Apollo is that you can use it with Vue.js, with React, with Angular, even with Reason. You can use, even Elm has something, so you can really use it with all clients. Another alternative that you should know is Relay. That's made also by Facebook, but it's bit less popular because it's a bit more complex. So, so the Launchpad is made by Apollo. It's a tool, online tool that you can use for making that kind of demonstrations. So it's perfect. So there you have a node server. There you have the client, and there you have the response of the query we're going to make. So GraphQL is very easy. Apollo, the setup. Yeah. Can you go below, please? And the Node.js, yeah. So that's where we start. We need to make a schema. So what's a schema? It's two things. It's type definitions, GraphQL type definitions, and it's what we call resolvers. It's how we will resolve what people ask. So it's very easy. Okay, just two things. When you look above, please. So those are the type definitions. So this is really GraphQL language. So what's very interesting is that this can work inside Node.js, inside Java, inside really any language. So you will always see the same same syntax. So that's very easy, I think. So GraphQL is all about just types and fields. So a basic type is the query type, and there you have a field hello, which returns a string. Okay, and then we need to tell how we will resolve this hello field. So to do that, Apollo uses it's like mapping this with an object. So we see that the query type has a field hello, and this is a function, and in this function you will just tell how to resolve it. So it's important to know that GraphQL is just a very thin layer that you put at the bottom of your server, or at the top, depends how you see things, but at the extreme level of the server, it's just a thin layer that just makes this interface. Now, how you get data, you can get it from another REST endpoint, you can get it from a database, you can get it anywhere. You don't need a graph database. Any database works. Yeah, so there we just say that hello field should return hello words. So now we can look at the client. If you can type in a query in the client, Davey, please. So it starts with curly brackets, and then you just type in hello, and if you execute that, yeah, so yeah. So that's the result executed. So yeah, when you make this, which is so basic GraphQL server, you by default have GraphQL, which is a tool that will help you. You have documentation by default. That's very important, I think, especially when the service has been made 5 years ago. We all know it, and in our company, I think we all have seen an old service that nobody take care of anymore, and it's very difficult to find documentations of all the things you can do with it. So with this, you have autocomplete. That's, I think it's amazing. You also have like a whole documentation page that comes along with it. So what this does is, okay, this string is just sent through a post request in the body. It will see, okay, the hello field will be this one, so I'll just execute that function and okay, get hello world back. Oh yeah, what I did, Davey, if you go above, you can paste. I have something in my on the line 4, and you just paste. You click on line 4 and you paste. I should have. No, yeah. Then it's if you go in the second tab, I put it also in the second tab. And the URL, you just copy everything there. And yeah. Okay, it's quite, okay. So what it is, I just made this before. So what is it? We have a list of pilots. Just one pilot, actually. It's Philip. It's a very well-known pilot, very good one. And we have planes. So I just asked them on plane names. So we have Boeing, Airbus, and A380. And you have pilots IDs. So we'll try to, this is our database, and we'll try to do exercises to give that back. So let's start. We want to have all planes. So let's, instead of having hello, we will type in planes. Yeah, and this shouldn't be a string, but should be a plane, an array of plane. So it should be, it's plane, capital P. And the plane should be inside the array. Yeah, and it's just plane, not planes. Yeah. And now we need to define this. So just above type query, we'll write type plane. No, inside. Yeah, there. Type plane, and a plane is no semicolon. It's just curly brackets. And a plane has an ID, So inside this, no comma neither. No, it is optional. It is working. It's accepted, but it's you shouldn't add commas. So ID is colon ID uppercase. Yeah, it was good. Colon ID uppercase. So ID is a type. Yeah. No, it's ID uppercase, really. Just ID. With D also uppercase. All uppercase, yes, ID. No comma. And we put an exclamation mark to say it's required, exclamation. Yeah, and that's very important that we don't have optional things, because by default, a GraphQL schema is everything is optional, but we want things required here. So actually, also for the planes, so line 20, at the end of the line, add an exclamation mark that says that you will have by default an array which will be empty, but you can also then be a bit more strict and say inside the array put also an exclamation mark, just after the between the E, yeah, this one, yeah. And that means that we do not only provide an empty array, you also provide an array with that has at least something in it. So we have an ID and we also have a name, and that's of type string. And that's also required. Yep. Okay. Now we need to write one resolver to do this. So below, instead of having hello, we'll have planes. Yeah, and this just returns planes that we have in scope. So now let's go at the client and replace hello by planes. Yeah. There we see that we immediately have autocomplete. There we need to fetch fields on it. So if you curly brackets, yeah, there you can enter, and then with alt space, you will see what is available. Yeah, you have ID and name, so that's really great. It's not only great for documentation, but what's also very interesting. Normally in REST, you would have just a planes endpoint that will give you, yeah, all the data that has been accumulated of what we know about a plane. That can be very small, but in the end it can be very huge, I think. But we don't want to use all this data, so GraphQL is really made to lower all the traffic, network traffic that somebody wants. It's really made also in mind for mobile. Mobile is very important today, so we don't want to grab a lot of information that we don't need. So that's really great. Often you hear GraphQL, you ask, you get what you ask. Exactly, that's just that. Yeah, so if you execute it, so that's super easy. Also the syntax, because this what somebody knows what thinks about something like this structure. You think about JSON, no? This is really like JSON without the values, and what you get back is that JSON with values. So that's very good. So that's one thing. Do we have time to do a bit more, or we shouldn't? Pizza? Can we do a bit more, or you think we should start? One more? Okay, short one. Okay, cool. So there, inside the planes function, line 28, in the arguments, you have 3 arguments. You will have to use this, so be careful. The first one is the parent. Let's call it parent. The second ones are the arguments. And the third one is the context. So you won't use context today, but in production you want to use context heavily for a lot of reasons, to be able to test your GraphQL backend very well for a lot of reasons. Okay. So the arguments is the arguments that comes from the client, and the parent is something a bit tricky. So the easiest thing to look at should be the arguments. So what we can do, Line 21, we can add one and get one plane. I think that's a good example to finish with. So at line 21, you add a new line, so plane now, just to get one plane. Yeah, plane. And this one, before the semicolon, it's like when you call a function. So at line 22, it's like calling plane with a function, but the key, not the value. Yeah, no. So this.
Oh yeah, it's the on the other one.
Yeah, and this one takes then also ID, I guess, ID and colon ID uppercase. So type colon ID. Yeah. Colon ID uppercase. Yeah, required. You can also say that's required. So now we need to, in the resolver, say how we resolve just one plane. Yeah, I hope it works. I'm not sure. So we need to access the second parameter. So first one you can underscore it, and then arguments, args. And we can return planes planes.filter, and then we write a function that takes the, or find. Find is better actually. Fine, you have a plane. Yeah, it's planes. A plane. I have the very easy part where I just talk and he has to type it all. Equals arguments .id. Okay, let's execute that query in the client because that should work. So it's now plain, and we call this like a function to pass an argument, and we have ID and colon one string. It should be ID. You need to say what's the name of the, yeah, voila. You need to add the field that you want to get back, so you want at least a name. He doesn't seem to like this. Semicolon? Oh, thank you. Oh, isn't it because arguments is something that he has maybe in scope? Maybe args. Yeah, that is available. So maybe he's messing. That's because we are in some sandbox environment. Args. Yay. Oh, no. Can we run it again? .id plain. If you just equals, because maybe the type is. Oh, but it's up. There is a look. Go back. I think there is a hoedje. It's ID, not. Yeah. Yeah. Yay! We got the Boeing. Nice. Yeah, I would like to show you much more. You will have in the workshop. I think it's good to start with this at least, so you understand a bit the concept behind it. But so the workshop, what we did, we made 3 clients: React, Vue.js, and Angular, and you just pick the client you like. You will have to implement for React people, you will have to implement the backends and the frontends. For the other stacks, you will just have to focus on the client. So I would say if you hesitate a bit between React Angular or React Vue.js, I would pick React. And yeah, you will just we made an app in both technologies, and we broke it. We totally broke it, but we didn't broke the Angular parts. We just broke the GraphQL parts. So the purpose is really to just focus on GraphQL and be able to, in 2 hours, 3 hours, really understand the whole thing, the GraphQL thing. That would be great. Does anybody has a question? Okay, and React, so, okay, others are React, okay, cool. It would be good that you join together. It's important that you pair program. Yeah, try to join people who are in the same stack. So React people again, please, so that you can see who is, look at who's raising his hand now and join those persons. Okay. What? You want to?
Yeah, that's good.
So yeah, let's start the workshop. So the Reactive API guys, please go to the back. Goran and Martin will help you out. If you want to do the JavaScript Beginners one, you can go behind. And I would say React guys, maybe you can join this table. Few people, you can join these two nice gentlemen.
Just for the repo quickly. Just
yeah, sure.
Hey guys, shall we put the repo up? So you're going to need the repo on GitHub. So if you go on the Hackages, you just pass that inside the thing here. So if you go on github.com, you take the GraphQL HackJam. Which group is going there?